welcome to the show. I'm Eric Murphy.
I'm V. LaBianca.
This is Skeptic Generation.
And we need to talk.
Hey, V, how's it going?
Hi, it's going good. How are you?
It's doing really, really well. I am excited and ready for some rest, actually.
Yeah, it's been a week.
It really has. So before we kind of dive into calls, I kind of want to talk just a little bit about it because we've been doing a lot. And for people who maybe want a little bit more of us and don't want to wait another week to
Do you
hear
want
us.
more?
Yeah. We've been on a couple of shows. So
Yeah.
do you want to tell people what you've been up to?
Sure. My week has been pretty packed. I was on Viced Rhino's show on, I want to say Thursday. It's a long week. A bunch of the YouTubers in the atheist community have kind of stepped up and joined Viced and taken over his channel to give him some time with his kids. And so I was able to be on there and kind of give him some support, which was a lot of fun. We reacted to tweets. So it felt very C'est La Vie-esque, which was fun.
It's been a while since you've done C'est La Vie.
Yeah, I probably need to get back into that at some point. And then also on Saturday, I had a conversation on a Christian channel, Miracles and Atheists, and we talked about Sam Harris's book, Letter to a Christian Nation. And I think I confused them because I was not as for it as I think they were prepared for me to be. So it was an interesting conversation. There were some hiccups there. Just
you got talked at a lot.
I left, and it was like I'm sure they're great guys, but like afterwards I left. I was kind of like, oh, I feel like I just went to church.
Yeah. I was actually also on that show the day beforehand. They had brought this guy who is starting to make the rounds again, and it's absolutely nuts. For people who grew up in the Satanic Panic and you know who Bill Schnubbelin is, that's the person I talked to. The guy says that he's an ex-Satanist, ex-Wiccan, also an ex-vampire, Illuminati, Mormon, Freemason, an ex, what else?
Wasn't he a druid too?
Yeah, he was a druid, high priest. He was a high priest in everything. Like,
oh yeah, they just all loved him so much.
I even joked on the thing that he has to have like a whole membership, thing. His dues every year must be absolutely wild. Like you open his wallet and just
Oh my goodness.
But this guy glommed onto the Satanic Panic in the 80s. He's like 71, 72 now, but he glommed onto the Satanic Panic in the 80s and spread and was part of the spread of this fear of, secret satanic cults, all over. And
someone says Satanic Panic is in the past. Fair.
True.
Fair.
But this guy had a lot more reach, people took it a lot more seriously back then. Not to say that church groups don't still do that.
That was mainstream though.
He's making the rounds again. He's also a flat earther and a young earth creationist.
And he has an ND in naturopathy.
Yeah.
This is like, and aliens. There were aliens too.
And aliens. Aliens in aliens. That's
in
right.
The Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. And I guess he'd said he'd never met an atheist. And so we sat down and I kind of held his feet to the fire for a little bit, which was just so much fun. I could have gone harder, but I also had to realize that this was a Christian audience who was watching, and I want them to be able to not view this guy as the victim of an evil, mean, angry, pushy atheist, And so I kind of had to walk that line a bit. But that was a conversation that I had on that channel as well. We put links to everything that we were
in the description, so you can just go straight to that. I like somebody in the comments called you the smiling assassin. I was like, oh, that works.
Yeah, I felt really good about it. I made sure I did not mince words about how damaging what he was doing was, and I felt like him not disagreeing was very telling.
Yeah. It was interesting for sure. So we've been all over the place. You also went on another podcast as well.
That's right. The RHE podcast. So Isaiah, who's called in several times before, who's a believer, had said that he wanted to have us on his podcast, and I went on there, and I've got to say, he was nice. He actually, as a thank you, made a donation to an LGBT charity.
Nice.
And he sent us a Starbucks gift card.
Oh, you failed to mention that part.
Yeah. Well, you don't like Starbucks.
That's fair.
But it was pleasant. I have not heard from him yet that has gone out yet, so I don't have a link in the comments. But when it does go out, we'll put the link in there.
Absolutely. And then just a couple other things real fast. Firstly, if you are interested in calling in today and talking with us, maybe about any of the things that we've done this week, any questions that those may have raised for you, or if you are also an ex-vampire who wants to expand on how the fuck that works.
And how wrong I am, obviously.
Then please do call in. You can call in at 585-526-8774.
Also, the Illuminati. You've never responded to my calls or messages, and I feel personally hurt by that. If you want to call in and let us know as well.
A state rep for the Illuminati. Yeah, feel free to call in. You can also get in touch using just your laptop or your phone by typing in the link tiny.cc/callSG.
Capital S, capital G.
Capital S, capital G. If you want to ask us a question or tell us something, have us read something out, and you don't want to be on the air, that is totally fine. We do have super chats enabled on this broadcast. So if you would like to send us a couple bucks attached to a question or a comment, feel free to do that. We always read those out at the end of the episode, and we thank everybody for donating there. Lastly,
this episode, as always, is brought to you by you. It's your support that keeps this going. If you want to support us, consider going to patreon.com/skepticgeneration. That's patreon.com/skepticgeneration, where you can sign up to get free ad-free versions of this stream, as well as a free ad-free version of the podcast. We do bi-monthly hangouts at a certain level, and we also just update and let you know what we're up to. VU recently posted a whole thing about how you do the descriptions and all of that.
Just all the metadata that goes into the back end of everything.
Because it's a lot, and I think that inspired me. I need to record and show our patrons kind of how I go in and do all the video and audio editing.
Yeah, absolutely. Finally, I do want to make sure that everybody knows that I am going to be... That was my phone. I am going to be off the grid next Sunday. I'm actually going to be networking for work, which is going to be fun. But that means that Eric might be flying solo next Sunday. So that's going to be fun. So you're going to get to see exactly what it looks like when the only person on the show is also the only person producing the show.
Yeah, that's going to be... please keep me company, and please be patient, because I'm going to do my absolute best, and we're gonna do the best we can. Is there anything else before? Oh yeah, we're getting ready to head out. So V and I are going to actually get some time away from the world. It's been a very, very stressful week with hosting People After Faithless Forum and doing the speaking and all of that. So we're not going to be doing a live a hangout in our Discord after this show. We're going to be getting ready and packing, and we're going to try and go camping. And I know it's late in the year, but we're hoping that we can stay warm and get away from social media and all of that. And so we're not going to be doing the after show, but
there will be plenty of pictures afterwards that we'll share out. So.
Definitely. All right. Are you ready to dive into calls?
I will be in 1 minute.
Okay. No worries.
Do we want to talk to Queer Atheist?
Sure.
All right.
Queer Atheist in Illinois. Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing fabulous. I'm really enjoying life. It's Sunday, and it's a good day.
Good. What did you want to talk about?
First of all, I'm in love with me, and I'm as gay as they come, and V, you just make me happy. So
I'll take it
for being you.
Thank you.
And Eric, I love you too.
That's okay. I love V more as well.
Your photo made me cry.
But,
question. So,
it made me cry too.
I know. I kind of saw that look of shock and amazement on your face, and it was beautiful.
That's really sweet.
No, I'm curious about the term and the label New Atheism, and I kind of got some feedback from Dan and Anthony on Friday, and I'm curious about what you think about it, what you think about the label, and the baggage that goes with it. I mean, don't get me started on Dawkins. That's a whole thing. And, you know, Hitchens had his problems. As much as I admire his atheism, you know, he's also very, very much into war.
Just like torture just a tad too much, at least in the beginning there.
Right.
Yeah.
There's so much baggage that goes along with that term that I do my best, kind of like a PC Myers kind of way, to like distance myself from that movement. But I feel like we owe a lot to it at the same time. So
yeah,
it's interesting that you don't. I was going to say, it's interesting that you don't bring up Dennett, because Dennett actually pushed for something similar.
Yeah, and I was working my way towards it.
Go ahead.
All four, you know.
Yeah, all four have their issues, and I really feel like there's almost like a cult of personality that comes along with it, which it bothers me, and I think it's become problematic. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So V, do you want to go first, or you want to pass that over to me?
Oh, well, I mean, I feel like this ties in really well with the conversation I had yesterday.
Yeah, go for it.
So Queer Atheist, I think it's useful to have this conversation. I know a lot of people, even on the Facebook group that we have up for this show, there was some tension around whether or not we should be calling out these people, because they did do a lot to progress the movement forward and make it more mainstream. And I agree, right? The four horsemen, as cringy as that is, did do a lot in the moment for the support of atheism. And that's really cool. And we should always be willing to grant that, right? That is just an objective fact. The issue becomes making it a cult of personality, exactly like you said. We have the ability to rationally dissect various things about these people, right? When they're talking about their field, right, they are right up there with the best of them.
Yeah.
When they veer off course or move into topics that they don't know very much about, but they bring that same level of gravitas, it's essentially a walking appeal to authority, then we can say, hey, you know what, that's not accurate, stay in your lane. And we need to be able to feel comfortable doing that, whether that's with Dawkins or Harris or anybody else or anyone on the internet, right? If I go out there and start saying something I know nothing about with this air of authority, I fully expect and hope that people come after me and be like, hey, V, stop it, like smack on the wrist, go back to what you're doing. So yeah, I think being able to differentiate between the value that somebody brings to the movement or has brought historically, and whether or not they should still be venerated with the current understanding and progress that we've made.
And we really do that. When we see somebody who has helped us a lot in our personal lives, you know, maybe it's their work or their talks or whatever it is, we want to, you know, hold them up as heroes. And it's just something that we got to push back against. But the other side of that, you were asking about the label, new atheism. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there are a couple pieces to that. Number one, it has been tried so many times. That was me. It has been tried so many times. There was the Bright movement that Dennett tried to push, right, which was an atheism and secular humanism and, you know, this certain set of values. And it was an effort to try and kind of consolidate these viewpoints because, you know, we stratify into, you know, these various communities and people were like, wow, so you're a bright, huh? So you're the bright ones and everyone else isn't? Like, it was just a really, really badly done thing. And then there was Atheism Plus, which was similar. And, you know, I don't view that as strongly as I do the new atheist stuff. I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of feedback.
There's a lot of feedback happening, and I'm not quite sure why that is.
No worries. I'm going to try my best. And if anything, we might just need to share a mic.
Okay.
Okay, so anyway, sorry about that.
No, you're good.
Yeah, so really ultimately, I think that what we should be doing is going, okay, I'm an atheist, and instead of trying to tie it all into one thing, because It doesn't work. I think that it sets up a situation where people are going to be gatekeepy, and it just has not helped historically. So there's that piece. The other piece is new atheism is the term that a lot of Christians will put on us and say, here's what new atheism is doing. And I think it's a clever way for them to try and bundle up what they think our values are so that they can try and attack it. Because when we talk about Christianity, they do bundle up all of their values and go, this is us. And they want to treat being an atheist or groups of atheists like a church. And so pushing back specifically on the new atheism term and going, you know what? What do you mean by that? And then when they talk about it, dissecting it apart and going, oh, well, atheists who think this, do this. Atheists who think that, do that. But when you try and bundle it all together, you wind up with ultimately creating a straw man.
Yeah, I agree. And I, when I spoke to Anthony and Dan about this, I kind of what I analogized it to was having an old racist grandma, and being able to appreciate grandma for what she did for you, and contributing her genes, but at the same time saying, okay, but there's a point at which you need to just kind of, I don't know how to put this nicely, die. And you know what I mean? Because that's horrible. That's horrible to say, but I mean, you know what I mean? Like you're from another generation. Your ideas are outdated, and when you try to apply your ideas to today, it just kind of puts me in a bad light, I feel like. So
it's definitely It's definitely something that we find more and more, especially when we live in the age of the internet and things don't just go away. All the embarrassing things that we did in high school, people don't know. The embarrassing things people are going through high school now, though, that's online forever. And I think we as a society need to figure out how to cope with that. But in the meantime, I don't know. I just have a little bit of charity. Go, you know what, Grandma? Thank you for everything that you did. I got this.
Also, there is a difference to, I think, I get what you're saying, and I think I agree to an extent, but there's a difference between saying, hey, you no longer represent us as a movement, therefore we are not granting you the ability to be the face of this movement, and die, right? Like, I feel like a lot of the time there is this kind of dichotomous idea where if you are not accepting this person as an authority figure, then you want them to go away entirely. And while that is the case with some people, for sure, most of the time the conversation doesn't get that drastic in either direction. It's just, hey, is this person the best representation for our movement right now? And would it be more helpful for them to take a back seat to somebody who has more understanding of the conversations that are happening today?
And we're not necessarily, for people who are wondering, we're not necessarily saying die. We're saying
no, that's
retire.
Exactly it.
Yeah, and just to clarify what I meant the idea.
Right.
I didn't mean anybody in particular. That sounds horrible.
No, yeah, exactly.
I'm not a terrible person. I meant the idea and the label need to, like the idea of the four horsemen. That whole thing is super cringy to me, and kind of like what you said. Like there are multiple. I'm an atheist, and I'm queer, and I'm a skeptic, and I'm this, and it's just a facet of one of the many layers that make up the beautiful diamond that is me. Right?
Yeah.
And this idea of painting with a broad brush on new atheism really just drives me nuts.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for a very long time I rejected the idea that there was a new atheism, right? And then I was like, well, new atheism is a thing, but that's not me. And then the more I talked with people who were a little bit more nuanced, maybe very progressive Christian, maybe coming in from a completely different religion that didn't take Christianity as the default, and saw kind of what a lot of the talking points were that were being used by people who consider themselves or who were being called, quote unquote, new atheists, I realized that I was perpetuating a lot of that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? That was a part of my progress. It was a step in the right direction. But to stay there in the face of a lot more nuance to me, didn't feel honest. So, yeah, I think there's nothing wrong. If you want to call yourself a new atheist, go for it. If someone else calls you a new atheist, probably they don't know what they're talking about. I figured that out. But if you want to critique that movement specifically, or if you want to use a different term, or if it makes you feel a little cringy, those are all okay. If that's part of your journey, then that's totally fine. But yeah, just taking the label part out of it, I guess.
Yeah. I that's all I had. I appreciate both of you so much, and much love from Chicago.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
You too.
So in the comments, there's a lively discussion about lacktheism as well as a term that's being put on people like us from Christian groups. Lacktheism being kind of a pejorative jab at what we're saying, that we don't accept the God claim, and they go, well, it's not a thing unto itself, and it's not atheism, because they're trying to own the word, and prescriptively give atheism.
Not just Christians either. It is there are atheist groups as well that like that word.
That's true. It just feels crappy. Like, if you're not even willing to meet someone where they are. If somebody says they're a Christian, we go, okay, cool, let's keep talking. If someone says they're an atheist, you go, no, you're just a lacktheist. Fuck you. Like, obviously you're not willing to have the conversation or any meaningful dialogue other than just trying to throw stones, and that's shitty. But anyway, all right, who are we talking to next?
Let's talk with, I'm really curious to hear more from Nick.
Oh, yay. All right, let's talk to Nick in Utah. Nick, you're live with Arrogant V.
Hi, guys. How's it going?
Hey, doing well. What do you want to talk about today?
Hi. So I just wanted to start by saying that I'm really happy to be here. You guys have got me through a lot just over the past year.
Oh, good.
Aww.
I just wanted to ask for maybe your perspective or any advice that you might have. I am an ex-Mormon, and I think just in the nature of being actively religious, you tend to say or do some things that in retrospect, when you gain a little bit more outside perspective, you realize is pretty cringy or just pretty bad.
Yeah.
So I was wondering what your thoughts on forgiving yourself and allowing yourself that forgiveness would be like.
Yeah. So I usually rely on talking about Megan Phelps Roper and her brother. I forget what his name was. The Phelpses. Have you heard of them?
No, I haven't.
No? Have you heard of the Westboro Baptist Church?
I most certainly have.
So the patriarch of the family, he had a lot of kids, and there is video of this family and children holding these horrendous, signs that say the God hates fags, and what else does it say? V, just really atrocious stuff. But some of them got out, and some of them who got out have spent their lives trying to help, speaking out about what it's like growing up in a hateful group, speaking out about what it's like when you're told that, the world is evil and you need to speak up about it, and recognizing and trying to promote LGBT, organizations and supporting them. It's really amazing what she's done. But I guess my question for you is, knowing that there's video of her and her family and those, knowing that they held those signs, would you be angry at her?
No, I don't think I would ever be angry at someone who has, actively tried to better themselves like that. And I think, that's something that I've tried to keep in mind for myself. But it's still difficult to apply the same level of empathy for yourself sometimes. So that's why I struggle a little bit.
It is. Self-compassion is so difficult. But at least holding that as a baseline. I know V wants to chime in, as I was just going to say, using that at least as a baseline to check in on can help. And then V, what did you want to?
Yeah, I think what I did, there are a couple components here. Nick, I have never been a Mormon, and I have many friends who were, but I don't know very much about their theology or their views around guilt and sin. But I do think that for me, leaving an evangelical version of Christianity, fundamentalist Christianity, I carried a lot of that instinctive, I have done bad things that I must feel guilty for and also make up for in some way out of that, right? And that is a crucial part of faith, is keeping people feeling bad about themselves and keeping people feeling like they need to do things in order to atone. And do you think that maybe you're holding on to some of that as you've walked out?
I think you probably have kind of hit the nail on the head with that, V. Wow, yeah, I don't think Mormonism is inherently super heavy-handed with that, like the idea that everyone is inherently bad. But yeah, I think just the idea of like needing to actively like do something to, for lack of a better word, repent, is probably a big part of what might be being a hang up, I guess.
Yeah. And honestly, if there are individual people that maybe you feel like you were mean to or said something you shouldn't have, and you're still in a position where you can go apologize to that person or at least rebuild that bridge a little bit, then absolutely you should go do that, right? That's something that is a reasonable expectation for yourself. But I think that it's worth sitting with this feeling a little bit and asking yourself, what good is it doing right now? Because there's a productive level of feeling like, oh, I shouldn't have done that and I need to go and fix it. But there is a lot of it that just kind of sits on you and doesn't help anybody, right? It's not helping you. Nobody else is being helped by this feeling. So why is it there? And just kind of what you're doing, what you've done with your religious views, kind of pulling those apart and looking at them and feeling all of the emotions the whole time and just being rational about it. This is another area where you can start to do that. And it's not going to be, overnight, boom, it's gone. But I think that it is going to slowly ease up as you identify it not as something that you are responsible for, but rather as maybe a thought pattern that has been instilled in you that you might want to get out of.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I actually did recently, I had an ex from like a year ago that I defended some, truly sexist shit to. Pardon my language.
It's okay.
We cuss on this show.
Okay. And we're still on fairly good terms, so I called her up and was like, hey, I am so sorry for the things, common, thing to say is I'm sorry for the things I said when I was Mormon. So it's just, we had a big, long conversation about it. But yeah,
good.
It was good.
Good. And if you can find places in your life to do that and rebuild those bridges, that is beautiful. And honestly, more than most people do. So good on you. But also, once you have done that, you can put it down, right? That is no longer something that is following you. Nobody up there in the sky is keeping a tally, right? Once people have said, oh, okay, thanks, dude, like, we're good, then it's good, right? And so I think just being gentle with yourself here and knowing that your religion did more than just give you a God belief or a belief about how the world works. It also gave you a lot of beliefs about yourself and how you should act in the world. And just slowly pulling those apart as well, I think, will be helpful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well,
By the way, you're also getting a lot of love in the live chat. I recommend looking back at the live chat because there are a lot of ex-Mormons who are like, heck yeah, sending love. There are people who are not Mormons who grew up with that same kind of thing who are saying, hey, you know what, I relate to that. That's something that I'm going through or have gone through. And like, even just in this small community we're building, dude, you are not alone.
Right.
And so if you ever feel like this is something that is, uniquely weighing you down, I know that it gives me comfort to know that this is something that a lot of people who leave religion are going through as well. And it's a team effort. We're all working on this for ourselves, but it's important to see that there's not something wrong with those feelings. It's something that, like V said, when you're trained to feel guilty and shameful, it's no surprise that you're going to feel guilty and shameful.
Yeah. I started this whole atheist journey at the start of this year when I, found some clips of Mr. Matt Dillahunty, and later when I saw you two on the other show that you've been on. And I just kind of followed you here when I found out.
Good.
But,
Yay!
I really like Eric. I just like the calm kind of tone that you bring to things, and V, you're very logical, and I like the both of you so much. But I eventually kind of found the nerve to apply some critical thinking to Mormonism itself.
Yeah.
And thankfully, the community of ex-Mormons on TikTok particularly.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very informative and very caring. So
Good.
Have you heard of the Naked Mormonism podcast?
I haven't. No.
Check it out. If you
I will.
It's
Go ahead. Sorry.
It's just a really, really good one. What they've done is they've gone in and gone through the history of the Mormon faith. It's its creation and the stories of the people who created it, because it's so recent that we have so many records and journals and things like that.
Right.
And I've definitely talked to plenty of ex-Mormons who have, in learning about how things got the way they are, it was able to help them kind of put it in its place. And when you're used to giving something deference, it's tough to look at it critically. And so when you see the man behind the curtain, it's a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think with Mormonism in particular, it's kind of been astounding to me as I've learned how much detail we have on everything. Like, we have books that old prophets, quote unquote prophets, have written, and apostles, and we have court documents stating that Joseph Smith was accused of committing, crimes, and still, bring that up to any still Mormon family. They're like, that's fake, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know that I would have done the same thing, and it just hurts to even think about that, like how just completely insane that is. But anyways, I don't want to take up too much of your guys' time. I just wanted to give you a call and talk to you. So thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely, Nick. Thank you for calling, and thank you for being one of those people who kept tuning in, even if it was uncomfortable for a little bit at first, because it makes me happy to hear that you were able to find your way out, and that right now you're asking all of the correct kinds of questions, right? Like this is a very, very good next step to unpack. So if you have any other questions as you keep going, or if you just want to kind of share where you're at, let us know.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thanks so much, guys. I hope you guys have a great weekend, okay? Or
Thank
rest
you.
of the weekend.
Will do.
Bye.
We're going to start our weekend tomorrow.
Our weekend is going to be 4 days long, and it's going to be in the woods, and it's going to be
amazing. I'm
amazing.
ready for it. I was just now I'm thinking about Mormon history. If you are an ex-Mormon or currently a Mormon and you haven't heard of the Mountain Meadows Massacre, It's worth looking up. All right, who are we talking to next?
Joe in Michigan has an interesting question for us, I think.
Yeah, all right. Let's talk to Joe in Michigan. Joe, you're live with Eric and V.
Yes. Hi, how are you?
Hi, we're doing well. What do you want to talk about today?
Well, I'm a bit of a dilemma here. I purchased a church about 10,000 square feet.
Holy
and I'm
crap!
Move into it.
Dang!
Really?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm kind of a staunch atheist almost, but I have sort of a dilemma as to what do I do with the contents? They left everything, and the building was built in 1959, so there's thousands of square feet of all of this stuff that is Christian-based Bibles and literature and creches and all this other thing.
Oh my gosh!
I don't know what to do with this stuff.
It
harkens back to like the book burning thing, where
Yeah.
if I throw
Right.
it away, I feel like I'm doing that.
So, if you're up for it, I would love to find out what you got. If you'd be up for sending some stuff to our PO box, because that sounds amazing. But as far as like you want to get rid of the pews and stuff too, right?
Well, I plan on keeping a couple, but I don't know if I should sell them and donate them, or it's more along the lines of the religious religious based literature and all of the items in there.
Right, because like you don't want to like distribute those necessarily, but
No.
Yeah, it feels like I'd be spreading poison if I were to sell them.
Yeah.
But then I've got that on the other side. Anybody can get those pretty much anywhere. So
That's
I'm
fair.
kind of in this dilemma on what to do.
interesting.
Well, there are a couple of things that you could do. One of them is you could take up paper mache. But if you didn't want to feel like you were destroying books, which is totally understood, why don't you? I don't see any problem with finding a progressive LGBTQ affirming, church and going, hey, you know what? This is some stuff that I got. I don't agree with you on everything, but at least you're not contributing to the oppression of and violence towards other people, and they might take them off your hands, and you don't have to worry about necessarily spreading it that way. I feel like, I don't know, I feel like if anything, I would rather create a world where those groups exist and are supported, if we're going to have to choose. Because I feel like when the stakes are a lot lower, when we're not talking about violence towards groups of people, when we're not talking about dehumanization. So that would be a good step.
Interesting.
What do you think?
Have you ever seen those books of poetry that's mostly blacked out, but like they pick out different words? You could do that.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
honestly, Joe,
500 or
this
600 markers.
Yeah, right. This is very, very interesting. Depending on how involved you want to get, I think Eric's idea is probably the most accessible, right? You're getting rid of everything, you're not burning it, and you're not distributing it to people who will use them in a objectively harmful way.
Right.
Another thing could be just like storage wars or something. Just like get a crate in like a storage facility, pack everything in there, and then sell
Don't
it.
pay on it.
Yeah, sell it, or
and
make
I
it a cache for like a treasure hunt or something, and be like, hey, if you find
my
my
gosh.
clues in these little Christian books, the circled words, you're gonna find a storage container
That you can
full
keep.
that you can keep.
Like a geocaching,
Yeah.
mountain of crap.
Geocaching the Bible.
Oh God, I'm sure a lot of Christian groups have already tried that. I don't know.
Honestly, though, if you made a YouTube channel, Joe, I don't know if you're into any of that, and called it geocaching the Bible and just tracked your progress trying to get rid of these books,
Really?
I would subscribe so fast.
I don't know.
I've got
I feel like you might be
years
giving.
of things.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I feel like you might be giving the Gideons ideas. Maybe not so much.
I did just think about purchasing a rubber stamp and stamping the inside covers with the term "nothing in this book is actually true, or warning, this may harm you, and just stamp every single book.
And
Or
just
just
drop
like-
them in
But
hotels.
like I
Just
said,
like
I'm
a
not sure.
pentagram. Like, don't even just like drop a pentagram in there and have
Well,
people freak out.
Okay, I disagree on
I was
that one.
telling some of my atheist friends that the giant crosses that are on the front of the building, it should just flip upside down the second I purchase the building.
Oh my gosh. Well, if you would
Oh.
like to be vandalized, that is a very good way to
Yeah, I was thinking, and then get good fire insurance on top of that.
Oh gosh.
Ooh, you know what you could do? You can make a very, very triggering escape room.
I plan on starting up an atheist group in my area and using some of the building to do that, but which would be ironic and funny at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of concert venues that have actually made their space in, old churches.
Yeah.
Sure, but I also want to be respectful to the community, since the church has been around for a while, and I don't want the community to think that I don't want to alienate myself from the community. So
Sure.
Therein lies my problem.
If
putting a dumpster out in front of the building and watching all these things getting thrown away might put some people off.
Yeah.
Finding and affirming church, a liberal Christian church, and doing that could probably earn you some pretty high brownie points there.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I think, you know what? That is a good idea. I think that if anything, if I had to give those items to a religious organization, it would be an LGBTQ friendly.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you don't have to give them all of them, right? Like, that's 60 years of stuff. But it would, I think, probably alleviate the concern around burning some of them or throwing some of them away if you gave some of them away as well, right? So you're not just giving somebody else 60 years of stuff, but you've picked out, some stuff you want to preserve. You've given them to people who will use them. And then, frankly, the rest of it is just junk. Like, there are books that get thrown out all the time, right? And it's not, as long as it's not like an ideological thing where you're like, burn all of the books that mention God, then you're fine to throw them out. Like, there's nothing sacred about them.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. But that sounds like such a fun project. Overwhelming, but really, really fun.
If you guys want anything out of there, just let me know. I'll be sure to mail it.
You know what? So contact Skeptic is it contact Skeptic Generation at gmail.com?
Yep.
Shoot us an email, because I collect small things, trinkets relating to specific religious things. Like I wouldn't buy a new, what are they? It's a censer.
Oh yeah.
That has the incense,
the smoke. Yep.
Yeah, I wouldn't buy one of those new, but if there was one of those, I would love that. That'd be funny. Or like a collection plate, so we could put our keys in it when we get home. That would be amazing.
That's not a bad idea. I'll definitely email you guys and send you some
beautiful
free stuff. On a side note, do you have any? Is the Book of Eric still out?
It is. It exists as a journal, so that you can write your own religious text. If V just threw up the graphic that we made for it. I love that graphic.
It's fun.
So we have a store online. It is, V, what's our store?
Our store is on Redbubble.
Yes.
So if you go to @Skeptic Show on Redbubble, you will be able to see all of our merch. It's also a link in the description of this video as well. So if you want to go back to the live stream and click the link, that'll take you to all of the merch we've got so far. We're actually, this is a good opportunity to point out that our class of 2021 merch is coming down.
At the end of the month, yeah.
At the end of the month, because it's not going to be 2021 anymore. So we're going to be releasing new designs for class of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So all of y'all can rep SkepGen.
Yeah,
but yes, the Book of Eric is still up there. And yeah, we would be happy to trade, I believe, a Book of Eric for some church merch.
I'm down.
Yeah.
I also got to autograph my first Book of Eric at Faithless Forum. That was fun. For people who are wondering, if you buy it and you meet me, I will sign it. But yeah, Joe, thank you for calling in, man. This was fun.
Thank you. You guys are great. I really love you. I've been watching your show for a little while now. So
Good.
Awesome. Have a great day.
Absolutely.
You too. Bye-bye. Oh, I liked that.
That is such a fun project. Like, if I had the money and the time, like maybe later in life, like I'd totally do that.
Yeah.
Just buy a church and make it into a house / like community center.
I would make it into a community center. I don't know if I would make it into a house. That would kind of weird me out a bit. Like, I would enjoy like running around naked there, for about a week, and then be like, okay, it is no longer as fun.
Oh my gosh.
But let's move on to our next caller. We do have a caller on the in the queue. I know that we've been talking to this caller quite a few times, but we don't have very many more theist religious callers. So if you do believe and you want to talk to us, give us a call. In the meantime, we do appreciate our religious callers, and we are going to hop in and talk to Sam Chaos in the UK.
Okay. Yes, we are.
Let's talk to Sam. Hi, Sam. Hello. Sam Chaos in the UK. Going once. Going twice.
Hello. Oh, hello. There we go.
Hey!
Sorry.
No worries. Hey, Sam. What did you want to talk about today?
So I was thinking recently about a lot of latent Christianity, which is basically Christianity. Ideas around Christianity that kind of stick with us if we leave Christianity once we've been a Christian.
Yeah, somebody sneezes and you say bless you. It's like,
yeah, the way we use words, and like some latent Christianity seems completely harmless, like the God bless you thing, like cool, whatever.
Okay.
But like certain things around the way we use words, like the way I quite often hear people use the term ritual as though it's this explicitly spiritual thing, and you can't just make yourself a daily ritual.
So what's funny about that one in particular is I feel like a lot of atheists have issue with ritual a lot more than any other groups, and it's understandable because a lot of people who exit a religion and then see ritual get brought right back to that, that oh my gosh, this feels like church. There's this connection that people create. But I absolutely agree. If you get up every morning, do some yoga, make yourself a cup of coffee, that is a ritual as well. If you meditate, that can be a ritual. But I think that atheists, we need to hold each other accountable a little bit and go, hey, you know what? You might be triggered by ritual, but that doesn't mean that you should concede it to the realm of religion only, in the same way that we should not be conceding community and holidays. Sorry, that's just a tangent that I went on.
I think you're spot on, Chaos, just because there's I think there are very harmful versions of that, though. So there are those that are like, hey, you might miss out on rituals, or you might miss out on celebrating a holiday, or whatever. That's a bummer, but that's not really harmful. But what is harmful are things like people who aren't Christian still being creeped out by Satanists, right? Or people who aren't Christian assuming that every religion operates the way Christianity does, and anybody who talks about their religion is evangelizing. And this concept that a lot of atheists have, especially as I was reading Letter to a Christian Nation, Sam Harris did a lot, was you could tell he had a very limited background in Christianity, and he was using his worldview without dissecting first all of that latent Christianity that he had that was influencing how he was talking about the rest of the world, right? Like he said, the Holocaust did not result in the world questioning whether God existed. And to me, that was shocking. And I asked some people on Twitter, I was like, hey, I feel like this probably isn't accurate. And there were people who were like, no, it's one of the reasons why Jewish people are a lot more atheistic in terms of their own culture now is directly resulting from that. So like, no, Christians didn't. So in Sam's mind, it's the world, right? So I think I agree with you a lot. Is that kind of the direction you were going in?
Yeah, pretty much. Because, like, there are some people who refuse... I've known atheists refuse cognitive behavioral therapy because it looks too much like a Christian ritual.
Oh, no.
CBT, really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And it's like, that's where the harm comes in for me, is where people are like, we shouldn't do this medical thing because it reminds me of a thing I used to do. Or where I've heard people be like, oh no, worship, that means this very specific thing. And so they will label me as harmful if I say I worship Hermes, despite the fact that that's not what that means at all. I'm not treating Hermes as some creator god or some all-good entity or even something all-knowing. And so, like, people will then treat me as though I'm as harmful as a Christian. Mm-hmm. And it just results in while it's not as harmful as the previous example, it results in some really dickish behavior.
Yeah. Hey, Chaos. Can I ask you an unrelated question?
Sure.
What's standing in between you calling yourself a theist and you calling yourself a deist or an atheist?
I think I have issues with deism as a position because it requires a stipulation of omni traits.
Mm-hmm. Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought that if you believed that a deity...
It might not be every...
It
might not be every version of it.
Okay.
I just only ever come across the term deism used in that way. I could just have missed something there.
You know what? Actually, let's leave that for people in the comments, because I was under the impression that if you could believe that something had the power to create the universe and that's it, that you would be a deist, even if in the act of creating, it was intentional or unintentional, or if it, blew itself up. That would be deism as well. But I don't know. I think
it might be. I might just be wrong.
I think next time we talk, I'd love to push you on that, because it's an interesting space that we have so much in common. We agree about so much, and we've had so many wonderful dialogues that you still holding on to the theist, kind of tag is something that really makes me curious, because I'm wondering if there are people who are watching who are like, oh yeah, no, I'm still a believer. But why,
Oh,
and we don't have to have it today.
I do. I will not get into the esoteria of it because we don't have the time. But it boils down to I've had certain experiences that I think it would be special pleading to disregard on the basis of them being a religious experience, and I have no other reason to disregard them.
So call back in with that, because I would love to engage with that idea.
Oh, sure. And it will get very epistemological, probably. But I think
Perfect.
That's our jams. Like, we love that.
Yeah. Though it is not, as Stephen Woodford accused me of being, pre-sub.
Oh, no.
We may need to... Okay, now we're definitely going to have to dive in.
Okay, this is fascinating.
Yeah, but
All right.
Chaos, thank you for calling in.
No worries. Good to talk to you guys.
Good to talk to you, too.
Bye.
We've got a couple of really good callers all of a sudden.
Yeah, so I think we're probably going to have time for two more. So, B, I know you're on the line. It's an interesting question, but I think we're going to have to keep that for next week. Tom and Tyler, both of you, we do want to talk to you, so please stay on the line.
Yeah, let's talk to Tom, and then we'll talk to Tyler. Or do you want to talk to Tyler first?
Tyler's a theist.
Tom, stay on the line. I want to talk to you. Okay.
Definitely want to talk to you too, Tom.
In the meantime, we have another theist caller. We have
okay.
Tyler in Ohio.
Let's do it. Okay.
Oh, and another one call. Why? Is church just coming? Do we need to start the show later?
I think we might need to start at noon.
We might have to. Let's find. Hi, Tyler.
Hello, Eric and V. I called maybe a month ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
I tried to call back sooner, but I've been busy.
No worries. I'm looking at the old notes. You used to be an atheist and watch me back in the day, and since then you've become a believer.
Oh, I remember you. Yeah.
And it says in the notes you want to ask if there's a point where rationality could become harmful or negative. Is that about right?
Yeah.
Could you go into a little bit more detail? Because I feel like we need a little bit more before we can engage with that.
Yeah, so basically my position, and it's because, I know what your show's about, so I figured I'd bring something more than just a testimony this time, right?
Nice.
Testimony doesn't work super well for atheists.
But yeah, so I think that there is a point where rationality almost breaks down. I mean, I'm all for rationalizing and thinking through problems and life ideas, but I think with rationality being as the only basis for decision making or living a good life, you can basically deconstruct anything that is good and anything that is bad conversely. So you end up, yeah, you might be able to get rid of some bad thoughts, but if it's your only baseline of making decisions, you actually end up kind of deteriorating your life. Does that make sense?
It does, just not in the definition that I have of rational. I might use different words, and so because of that, I'm kind of having this mental split where I'm using my definition of rational, which doesn't fit what you're saying, and also trying to follow what you're saying and seeing maybe what language I would use for specifically what you're describing. But I could be, I feel like I could be totally off base and we could be shooting way off into anywhere. So could we start with you defining rational? Because the idea of it, hitting a point where it could be harmful, I don't necessarily understand. So what's your definition of rational?
So rationality, in the way I'm using it, I would say is using like mental logical devices to come to a decision about like something, really anything. I'm trying to struggling with the words here.
No worries. Can I offer one? Maybe kind of give you insight into where I'm coming from on this?
Yes.
So rational is specifically in the realm of epistemology. It is about how you know what you know. And so if you are being rational, the way that I would view it is you are being internally consistent. If you are making a rational decision, it makes sense in the context of everything else that you know about the world. The weird thing is, it's not an ontological thing. It doesn't actually have to do with what exists. And so you could have really weird ideas about the world and come up to some weird conclusions, but in your internal sphere, it's rational, right? And so it's really funny because I've seen debates where people talk past each other and they give their internal, their internally consistent view and say this is rational, and are scratching their heads and looking at each other going, well, I have an opposing view and I told you why it's rational to me, and they're just talking past each other. So instead, what if we use the definition that it could be convincing to another person, right? So the idea is that if you find a decision rational, then you should be able to provide evidence that would be convincing to another person. And that way, it may seem weird on its own, but when you're using it in practice, it's an engine. It works, because then you can actually go, okay, here's what I think could be convincing to you. And it begins the conversation on a forward step so that you can then engage with that. Or
even just putting the word objectively before it. So like the idea is belief in God rational? To a Christian, yes, absolutely. There's no contest. There it is within the theist worldview rational to believe that there is a God. In the atheist worldview, for what it is, it's rational to not believe in a God. If we're talking about something that's going to convince the other side of a thing, then maybe just using the term objectively rational.
That's basically how I was using it.
I disagree. I feel like objectively rational tries to, shoehorn ontology into epistemology.
Possibly. Tyler, I feel like there are two different conversations. There's the one Eric and I are having where we debate definitions, and then there's the one you want to have. So
true.
Give us your question. What is it in a small kind of neat little package?
So I guess my question would be, do you two think that there's anything that maybe you've either damaged your lives or have come to a wrong conclusion on that was just based on you trying to parse objective facts that has maybe hurt your life? Because I could go through some examples of where I think a lot of people, atheists, even Christians, it's not specifically a atheist thing. It's just the application of like this objective reality thing can often lead to a bad conclusion. But
Really?
if you want me to expand on that, just let me know.
Sure. So I would love to, but I also want to make sure that we're kind of also directed in the same place here. So can I repeat back to you what I think you're asking?
Of course.
Okay, so the example that I'm thinking is someone who, without enough evidence, is being indecisive, and then the moment to act passes. That's the first kind of example that I think you might be asking for. But are you specifically like, what kind of example can you give? Because I feel like I'm floating here.
Yeah, so like a good example, I would say, I'll just use a really outlandish one, but it's definitely happened a billion times. Again, has nothing to do with whether you're an atheist or a theist, but we could take like flat Earth, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you could make a completely convincing argument for flat Earth, even though we know it's not true.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that the conclusion that the Earth is flat is just people getting so high up in their head and not using any sort of other devices other than just, you know, what they want to see. Like, I guess, yeah, their internal rationality. And I think that with a little bit more of like, what is it, like external thought, you might come to a better conclusion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we're missing here is this concept of what I think a better term, Tyler, might be skeptic or skepticism instead of rationality, because skepticism,
yes,
I
right.
think, is exactly what we're both talking about. And again, I think we just might be talking about it in a different way. So for me, excuse me, Eric, while I get
You do you.
up here a little bit.
Yeah.
So for me, Tyler, what I'm thinking of when I think of skepticism is definitely part of it is questioning existing beliefs and questioning who is telling me this, why are they telling me this, can I find other information that might either corroborate it or disprove it. That's definitely a big part of skepticism. And I think that's what a lot of people mean when they say skepticism, right? I don't think that's true, right? But there's other parts to using skepticism in a healthy and productive way that will avoid you slipping into things like flat Earth or conspiracy theories. And that's what we try to promote on this channel. And some of those safeguards that we absolutely need in order to practice skepticism appropriately is understanding things like Occam's razor, right? Understanding things like, yes, everyone in the whole world could be involved in an enormous conspiracy to pretend that the Earth is round for some reason when it's actually flat. But they could also just be educated in their fields and corroborating something that is objectively true. So there's always going to be that if-or kind of conversation, and it's up to people to use their skepticism and their rationality to think about which is more likely. What confidence level would I ascribe to this thing, right? Am I 90% sure that this is the case? Am I only 60% sure this is the case? So it's not just hardline, always question everything, never believe anything, everything is up for debate. It is, hey, when you're presented with a claim, whether that's a God claim or a claim about the Earth being flat or anything else, what you need to do is you need to come at it from the null hypothesis, right? Which is the idea that unless you have evidence to back it up, you're going to withhold a claim, your own claim about it, right? So there is a God. Okay, well, I'm not going to jump straight to no, there isn't. And I'm also not going to jump straight to yes, there is. I'm going to withhold my own opinion until I see evidence in one way or another. Same with flat Earth, same with anything else. So I agree with you that if you just use skepticism in that kind of blunt force way where you're hammering everything with this hammer of, no, that's not true, no, there's something else going on here, you're going to be falling prey to conspiracy theories left and right, and that's not good. But there are other ways to use skepticism in a healthier, more responsible way that will prevent that from happening.
Yeah, and then to that point, I would say that since now that we've covered the extreme example, I could talk about how I think it relates to atheism, if you want me to. But,
so we've got, V and I have kind of decided we're going to run a little long. We've got a bunch of other callers, but we want to make sure that we're giving you the attention that you deserve. So did you have more to tie into this one, or did you want to hold that next one until the next time you call in?
Well, I think honestly what Tyler is trying to get at is giving an example like you asked, and then tying that back to the original question for us, which is, how is atheism, do you find in atheism that happens, right?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, my point with that example was we can agree that there is a point where skepticism goes too far, right? And I'm not asking you to agree that like atheism is the point, but I just want to know if we have common ground at least there. Like flat earth skepticism, that's too far, right?
That's not skepticism, actually.
Well, it's
they call themselves skeptics, but it's actually not the application of skepticism. It's not.
And I have problems with that because that falls into no true Scotsman territory. Because if you take the philosophical definition of skepticism, and I'm seeing this in the chat as well, and you follow that to its most extreme conclusion, you do get to that point, which is why a lot of people get confused there.
So I entirely disagree when it comes to conspiracies, and this is going to be our lead into the next caller. But when we're talking about conspiracies, if you are a skeptic and you're saying, I don't know, how do I know the things that I know? Why is this thing this way? That is not substituting in a grand conspiracy. It is not substituting in. You can ask yourself, is it more likely the case X or Y? But if you are, instead of asking why, you're instead trying to find things that back up a predetermined claim, that's not skepticism.
Right, but I don't think that's necessarily inherent in his question.
No, it's the conspiracy.
Yes,
thing.
Tyler, go ahead.
So I would say to that if you've ever looked into like what those flat Earth people say, their entire like thing is that they're just so skeptical of all the evidence that is presented in the real world that they don't accept the Earth is round. Like they just claim that everyone's lying. Like they're skeptical of it. I don't.
Yeah, claiming people are lying is not being a skeptic.
Right. That's the issue here. It's not necessarily that the people who have fallen for conspiracy theories are being skeptics. It's that a misapplication of skepticism left them open to being taken in by conspiracy theories.
There we go.
Right. So, Tyler, to get to the point of this call, to answer your question, there are things about my worldview that are sad now because I applied skepticism to them. I no longer believe in an afterlife, right? I don't think I'm seeing my grandpa again. That's really sad. I don't think that we have souls. I have not been convinced that that is a thing. And that is weird to grapple with, and that throws a whole bunch of preconceived ideas about the sacredness of humans and all of this up in the air, right? So yes, there are things that I quote unquote lost when I applied skepticism correctly to my beliefs. But I would rather know what is true or be closer to truth than be happy, right? If your goal is to be happy, then don't be a skeptic, because that sucks. If your goal is to know what is true and find peace in that knowledge, then skepticism might be right for you. Consult your doctor. May result in extreme absurdism. That's my response to you. Eric, do you have any?
You know what? I see the bait you threw out there. But I also want to make sure that we have time for the other calls. No, I'm going to leave it at that because you left a really good point. I would love to just underline that, and that is that feeling bad about a thing is not necessarily a bad thing.
That's really good.
Yeah, learning sad truths is not bad. And the only time when I see skepticism taken too far is when people aren't, the ultimate goal of skepticism is I don't know. Mm-hmm. And
Yeah, so
finding how many steps there are to I don't know can help you cut out a whole lot of crap that you're that's lumped in with whatever conclusion you're investigating. The conclusion of skepticism is ultimately that, and I don't know. I feel like the only thing that you would get if you were over applying skepticism is indecision and the inability to come to a decision. But then ultimately from there, you need to rely on other tools like empiricism.
Right. And I think that was my point. My point is that we cannot assume that all those other tools are inherently in the concept of skepticism. They are applied to skepticism in order to make sure you get the best result.
Yeah.
But to suggest that empiricism or humanism or any of these other things are included in skepticism is fallacious.
Yeah.
So anyway, we have a couple more calls to get to, but Tyler, it was good talking to you again.
Yes, I would absolutely love to go deeper on this topic at some point.
Yeah.
So, because I think there's a lot more to be had here. I think this could be very productive.
I love it. Let's definitely give us a call back, probably closer to 11:30 than 12:30, and we will make sure to get you up there.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. You'll take care of a beautiful day.
You too.
All right. Tom or Nick?
Okay, so here's the deal, you guys. We talked with our amazing call screeners, and we have two amazing theists and somebody who wants to talk to Eric about the ex-vampire interview with an ex-vampire. It should have been called Interview with an Ex-Vampire.
No. That's the name of his actual 8-part series.
Oh, never mind. Never mind. We are going to run a little bit long. If you want to hop off to see other
Heck
shows.
no! Stay with us. We got the cool shit coming up. Let's go. Who are we talking to?
We're running long. We're going to talk to all three of these callers.
Damn straight.
So stay on the line. Our
Yeah.
call screeners have decided to stick with us. Thank you, all of you. We're going to run a little bit long, and
We got
grab all
really
three
cool
of these.
callers.
Yeah. Who do you want
Let's
to talk
do
to
it.
next?
So in order, I want to be able to take Tom after Nick because Nick is So let's start with Nick.
Okay, perfect.
And I believe, is this Nick Snap?
This is Nick Snap.
Nick, you there?
I am here.
Hello.
How's it going?
Doing well. So you had V and I both on over the last few days on your show, Miracles and Atheists. For people who don't know who you are, I want to kind of let people know just a little bit about who you are. Nick reached out to me years ago when I was just starting out on YouTube as well, wanting to set up good faith dialogues between atheists and Christians. And I'd been on your show a couple of times, and you decided that, a lot was happening in your life and you needed to take a break. And so you're restarting fresh, but you definitely kept that connection and you maintained a good relationship with me. And so when you reached out and said, "Hey, Eric, do you want to come on my thing? I'm starting it back up." I said, "Heck yeah." So Nick, hello. What did you want to talk about today?
Hello. You nailed it. Yeah, that's it. First time caller. So I also, you and I talked about getting quality callers on here. Not that I'm blowing smoke about myself or anything like that, but I do want to feed you quality callers, and I don't want to set the bar too high. But yeah, anyway, I'm excited to be on here. I really enjoyed talking to both of you. Ironically, the interview with the ex-vampire had something to do with that. So that kind of spurred my topic that I wanted to talk to you all about here this morning.
Sure.
This idea of worldwide conspiracies. I'm just going to be honest with you, Eric, and the Friday, I was very disappointed and just a lot of things. But when the flat Earth thing came up, and I know you just talked about it, I was like, wow, where do I even go? It just really took me back, and I wasn't even really sure where to go from there because it was just very disappointing. So I'm not going to get into all that, but
it is. I do kind of want to clarify because I feel like people who are watching may not understand what is disappointing about that. Nick, I think you're a great guy, but when I saw around Halloween you had this guy on, and he was making these amazingly ridiculous, fantastical claims that were so damaging. And the amount of times they went, oh, wow, yeah, really? Oh, and this happened too, didn't it? I was really, really bummed because I was like, where has Nick gone? What happened that drew him to a place to believe really, really fantastical, magical, dangerous claims? And out of all of the redonkulous things he said, I'm glad one of them stuck. I'm glad the flat earth thing stuck. And so for people who are watching, Nick, I know it seems a little harsh, but we've got a whole audience who are watching who don't know who you are. And so I want to contextualize that so people go, okay, when Nick says he was disappointed, is he saying he was disappointed in Eric? No, Nick was disappointed in this gentleman that he thought was a tether to understanding the evil Satanists and a tether to understanding this spiritual, magical world. Turns out that he's just a nut.
Let me clarify that, man.
Okay.
I got to clarify that. I
Please.
didn't necessarily consider him a tether to these things. However, I did think he'd have a lot more to back up his claims, and that was disappointing for sure.
Yeah.
But, I think I try to give people the benefit of the doubt, right? And I'm not going to say I humor people on my show. I try not to. I'm getting better. I'm trying to just get better overall about not being a people pleaser and all that kind of stuff. So
sure.
I do try to give people the benefit of the doubt for if they make a claim. Okay, let's go with this and see where it goes next. So I dropped the ball in a couple areas there as far as, dude, you did your homework exceptionally well, and I admire you for that. And I am actually I'm going to take that out of your playbook when moving forward. Not that I don't do my due diligence, at appropriate levels at all times, but I learn from that. So I'll just maybe make that claim.
I appreciate that. Honestly, I had no idea how wild it was until I reached out to a friend, Dietrich, who was just like, you're having who on? I was like, I'm going to be talking to Bill Schneebelen. And he was like, holy crap, my family grew up with his books in the house and we were paranoid and it was intense. And I was like, oh, okay, now I need to look into this. And you had someone on who had glommed on to the Satanic Panic in the 80s and had used and essentially weaponized paranoia and xenophobia to spread vile things about other groups of people to keep people afraid. And that fear led to lots of people being losing their jobs, being ostracized from their communities, jailed for decades. And I mean, it was a modern day witch hunt. It was a mass hysteria. And the fact that he appealed to the mass hysteria to back up the mass hysteria. And every time I said it was proven wrong, he never corrected it because he knows it's true. Right. It was an issue. I'm sorry, but we're going a little long. You wanted to talk specifically about worldwide conspiracies and whether or not worldwide conspiracies can be valid. Is that right?
Correct. And I don't want to go really with Bill on this one, but you did bring it up. It kind of just jogged my memory where you said, Bill, are you proposing SRA? Is that right? Satanic ritual abuse?
That's a Christian term.
That kind of thing from that group? Right. Okay. Yeah. So that kind of what led to the question of you saying, okay, are you posing a worldwide conspiracy? But then that got me thinking about other things like the state of our nation and a lot of the things that are going on to date. And I wanted to just kind of talk to you about some of those topics.
Sure. So question, do you think that there are underground pedophile tunnels in Washington?
I don't know about tunnels, but I do think there could be elite groups that take part in human trafficking. Yes.
Okay. So elite groups taking part in human trafficking gets me to I think that is true. Okay. I think that the specific, one side, liberal, Democrat, authorities are pedophiles is number one. You have to see it on its face as just horrific. Number two, that would bolster, like, I just don't understand that. So, okay, that is a lot lower of a claim. So if you think that Jeffrey Epstein existed, which he did, do you think that makes it more or less likely that Pizzagate was a thing? because
Jeffrey Epstein, everything he was doing in the islands was more or less likely if Pizzagate was a thing. I think it would make
because
there could be a correlation there.
Okay, so you also understand that with the Pizzagate accusations that there was blood sacrifices to demonic entities and cannibalism. Do you think that the existence of Jeffrey Epstein backs up those accusations of blood sacrifices and cannibalism and all of that?
No, you would need to have more for that claim to be made.
Okay.
Eric, I didn't really want to go like with the child sacrifice thing. I just kind of used it as a catalyst for the conversation. But
I get it.
I want to talk about specific.
But here's the thing: somebody showed up at a pizza restaurant, right, with a weapon, ready to mow down employees and save the children in the basement.
Yeah, it's a problem. Yes, that's a problem.
So I don't want to get too esoteric. Yeah, I don't want to get too esoteric. It's really, really dangerous believing a thing without evidence. So
I want to talk about another conspiracy, though.
Yeah.
Another conspiracy theory, not child sacrifice. I want to talk about the transformation of this nation to, or the desire for certain people and maybe a large group of people, or I shouldn't say it like this, maybe a small group of people influencing a larger group of people to transform this nation from where we are today, free, a democracy, republic, to communism.
Got it.
Talk about that.
Sure. So I think number one, that's
What are your
steeped.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that number one, that's steeped in a aging culture that had an entire lifetime of anti-communist, anti-socialist propaganda shoved down their throats. Okay. And so using that as equivalent to evil is something that they do right off the bat. I get it. I think the first step is recognizing that you're talking about a system of, governance, and seeing where, okay, something's beneficial and not beneficial will start to de-radicalize you from the insistence that it's evil. But second, no, I've tried. I feel like I've hit a point that if I would have been included into the club, I would have, and the people that I've gotten to talk to and the people I've gotten to spend time with and become friends with would have gotten to. No, I think it's more likely that society is recognizing that we should be good to each other, and that simple things like basic human dignity being protected, like human bodies being protected, like the idea that being hungry shouldn't be something that people go, oh, you got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But no, taking care of hunger, taking care of health, taking care of basic needs so that people can at least be on footing to grow from there. Dignity, that's not a step towards communism. That's a step towards decency. And I think that the accusation that there's an elite conspiracy, no, that is just xenophobia that doesn't recognize what it is. It's people.
Like I said, xenophobia is one of those things I hear a lot, but I'm trying to make sure I understand what xenophobia means.
Sure. So
Can you define that real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. Fear of everything in the outside world. Fear of things that are not yourself.
Okay. So I 100% hope and pray that what you're saying is correct. There is no agenda from a larger group of people. I want to ask this question, then, Eric. So, like, looking at just who owns the things of this world, the companies, the major organizations, the continued mergers and things like that. If you actually go online, this is public information, you start looking into like who's on the board of directors and who actually
is this
all the major organizations. Ultimately, there's like 3 or 4 of them. There's BlackRock and then Vanguard are at the very, very top. Or not in the board of directors, but the people that actually have the majority of the shares in these companies. So they're really consistently, if you can think of any company, anything on the earth, from mining to food to oil and gas to Facebook, everything ultimately comes down to like 2 or 3 organizations.
Okay.
And that's public knowledge.
So
asking this information. So here's where I'm going to go with this real quick. Like, if that is the case, if you're looking at like who owns, following the money, who owns these things, and ultimately being a smaller group of people, could it be possible if these groups of people want to have their own specific selfish agendas?
Right. So that's different. That's different from the claim, the first claim. The first idea that there's a we're facing a situation where the middle class is going away. that we have created a society where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and that the protections that are being stripped away from normal people is being taught. It's being called communism, and socialism is being vilified. I think that's actually something that the Republican right has been doing for years and has been enabling for a very long time. Democrats, liberals have been ringing the bell on that for an incredibly long time and been called socialists, communists for it. But the fact is, stripping away, the middle class is, number one, if it did exist, it would exist as a Republican thing. That's first off, just to clarify that. But second of all, I think that there are some very, very powerful people, but the idea that someone would secretly have an agenda that they are trying to cover up. So this specific line of thinking is being used to back up nuts claims like aliens landing and walking among us, anti-Semitism, in the extreme anti-Semitism. And do I need to clarify the anti-Semitism, or do you understand how that has been perpetuated by anti-Semitic views? Okay. It has also been used to prop up this idea that there are huge cover-ups. When we talked to Bill on Friday, he said that, well, the Satanists were summoning this demon, but when they came back the next day, there was no evidence. They're really good at covering themselves up. No, dude. Have you spent any time with friends who are police officers or been around them? They're not going to be able to hold a secret. Not like that. If you're expecting every police department in every town, every city, every state, every county, that they all are under the thumb of a grand conspiracy to hide, things like human sacrifice, torture, pedophilia, that's way different than the first statement of, too much money and power in one place. Do you get why that's different?
I see where, absolutely, I see why it's different. I guess the connection, I didn't really make the link between the communist statement and then the rich owning everything. I guess the communism would be like a label for it, and labels are tricky, right? Like you get that with Christianity all the time. What does it mean to be a Christian, all that kind of stuff. But I look at what I'm kind of concerned about is, not kind of concerned, but I'm very concerned about is just the patterns, right? If you look at people that were around as Cuba transitioned from what they were before. I guess they were their democracy before to communism, and you talk to people that were around and that were living during that era, and the things that they said were happening in their nation, even in the 40s with China itself, and Eastern Europe. These people they'll come on there and say in America, wake up, look what's happening, and there are things like dividing the population, whether it's Democrat, Republican, vaccinated, unvaccinated, white supremacists.
Okay, so Nick, if you want to call in about vaccines, call in another week.
Can I?
I don't. I want to talk about the division, though, dude. I want to talk about division of the nation as one of the processes that leads to this alternate form of government and control.
Okay, so I do want to kind of jump in here real fast because I think we got super specific really quickly, and I think that we're probably losing a couple people because the larger conversation here is, do worldwide conspiracy theories exist? And then your question is, would communism be considered one of them?
Good way. That's fair.
Right. So I want to make sure we're addressing that first part first before we talk about the nuances of Cuban government, which frankly I am not prepared to do on this call. So here we go. I just want to make sure that we understand what a conspiracy theory is and what might be misconstrued as a conspiracy theory. Okay, because conspiracy theories are an attempt to explain harmful or tragic events as the result of the actions of a small, powerful group, usually with political motivation, and such explanations reject the accepted narrative surrounding those events. In fact, the official version may be seen by these people as further proof of the conspiracy. So there are a couple different layers here. That's from Britannica as the definition of conspiracy theory. So there are a couple layers here, right? There's explanation of a harmful or tragic event. It is perpetuated purposefully by a small covert group of people, usually for a political reason, and it goes against the common narrative, and the common narrative is considered part of the conspiracy. So there are like 5 different things in there that I think would then make us talk about a conspiracy theory.
That's a good point.
Granting all of that, there are I don't want to get too comfortable saying things like, oh, well, there could never be an enormous sex trafficking or child abuse organization out there spanning countries and isolated in one stronghold of power because the Catholic Church exists. So, like,
but we know that the Catholic Church is doing it.
Exactly, which is why it's not a conspiracy theory. So let's stop talking about, well, how widespread is this dangerous thing? Is that a conspiracy theory? No. A conspiracy theory is something that is harmful, that is perpetrated by a small group, that is politically motivated usually, not always, and that goes against the common narrative. And there are so many things here. So I want to get away from this idea that, like, because human trafficking is creepy and a lot of people, unfortunately, are hurt by it, it is therefore a conspiracy theory, right? Like, those things happen. Absolutely they do. Things on our side, things on your side, things without a political leaning, like bad things happen across the board in general. What you're talking about is a whole other layer to it, which is the conspiracy part, which is, I think, the part that we take issue with. Does all of that make sense?
V, that was fantastic.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. So I guess it would be, would it be a conspiracy? Well, it's okay. There's a difference between conspiracy theory and conspiracy, though, right?
Right, exactly.
Like, at what point do conspiracy theories transition to conspiracies?
When you can prove them.
By enough evidence. Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I guess right now, would you all consider the transformation to this nation as something like communism, whether you want to label it like that or not, a conspiracy theory?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
It's a conspiracy theory in that if you were to look at the legislation that's been passed, the fact that we are regressing as a society into a version of the United States that removes and represses people, that takes away their rights, I'm sorry. I'm stuck on the Supreme Court right now. V, help me out because I'm just going to get angry.
The problem here, and then I think we should wrap this up and move on to the next caller.
Yeah.
The issue here is twofold, Nick. On the one hand, you're saying, is this thing that I am afraid of or that I see as a concern a conspiracy theory? Mm-hmm. And I would not say that the concept of a small, powerful group of people influencing a government and trying to take over through legislative action and through voting suppression is a conspiracy theory. And I think we have enough evidence to back up the fact that that is happening, that we can just call that a conspiracy. The theory part of it comes in when you talk about something that isn't actually happening or can't be proven to happen. So communism taking over the U.S., I don't see any evidence for. If you have evidence for it, please feel free to link it in a comment below or send it to our email or something, because I would want to know about that. I don't see any evidence of that. So that is a conspiracy theory, but not because we're talking about a takeover, a covert takeover of a government. It's because we have not seen that particular thing attempting to covertly overtake this government. So I think we need to wrap up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I got busy sniping back. You hit the core of the matter, V. Thank you.
Thanks for calling in, Nick. Appreciate you.
You're welcome. My pleasure. And I appreciate you all. And thank you all for being on my platform. And we'll do it again soon.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. Link in the description.
Right.
Yep.
Link is actually currently in the description. You're right. I spend so much time, especially because I've been working with Holy Kool-Aid for the last few years, just watching the legitimately actually happening conspiracies going on with the Quiverful movement, with it just...
Yeah, and I think it's valuable for people on the side of perpetuating conspiracies and conspiracy theories to get us up in arms and aggravated and focusing on, well, this particular issue is not okay. Agreed. But our emotional draw to that issue, whether that's positive or negative, has no grounding in whether or not something is actually a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
So
I'm turning red. I'm sweating.
You're good. You're good.
V, you handled that amazingly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's talk to Tom.
We'll talk to Tom, and then Scott, do stay on the line. We are running long, and we do want to talk to you because you did what we asked, and you called back, even if you were a little bit late. All right, let's talk. Let's talk to Tom.
Yeah. Tom in Georgia. You're live with Eric and V.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Tom. What did you want to talk about today?
Well, thanks for going the extra inning so we could talk today. I was listening to your conversation on Friday with Dr. Vampire, and holy buckets. Like, I have so many questions.
I will do my best to answer them if I can. The jacket's coming off. What's up?
Okay, here we go. So are you still in touch with him? Like, are you going to ask him some follow-ups?
No.
No.
Okay.
That was funny.
No. This is somebody who it's interesting. Like, if somebody said, "Hey, Eric, do you want to debate a white supremacist on whether or not the KKK should be a political party that people pay attention to?" I'd say no. That is absolutely not useful. In fact, I don't even want to give my platform to someone who's going to espouse those views. And it was similar with Bill Schnoebelen, who has spent a lifetime, or at least over 30 years of his 72 years, spreading these incredibly vile, baseless assertions of kidnapping, pedophilia, sexual assault, cannibalism, murder, being done by the clandestine other. That I think going on to call him out for it and at least show people that he had nothing to say in his defense was useful, and that's it. Right. If people want to see just how nutty it is and just how little he's interested in trying to even cover up the fact that it's freaking nuts, you can send them a link to that video. But I don't see more time spent with him, espousing that crap useful.
Right. I thought what was funny was when the conversation started to steer towards an actual religious debate early on, his only proof was, well, they found the Temple of David or whatever. And I'm like, well, I don't care if they found Noah's Ark. How does that explain God built the universe with magic or whatever? Like,
it did. There were so many little things that I didn't get the chance to say and snipe and jump in on. That's one of them. The thing is, I needed to try and balance that with the fact that a Christian audience was watching. And if I went too hard in the paint, it was going to be this mean, evil atheist is beating up on me. I'm a victim, and I did not want to grant that narrative. And so I needed to pick my battles. And the fact that, let's say you found, like you said, let's say you found the Temple of David. The fact is, archaeology suggests that David was a ruler in the Levant in those days. That does not...
Which means, of course, that God created the universe and set King David up to be king in the first place. I mean, duh.
And that the lineage of David is blessed by God, that David fought Goliath and that David did all of these things. Yeah, that's not how that works. I could have whipped out the whole, Spider-Man is in New York, the existence of New York. Does that solidify the existence of Spider-Man? Could have done it, but then I wouldn't have gotten to the whole, you think you're a vampire, right? And him saying yes, or we're a vampire.
That was one of the most surprising... For me, one of the most surprising things was this guy's got a huge history, and it was built up like, oh, this is going to be an interesting conversation. And all he has is the same crap that, any Christian could throw up without, actually considering, is there evidence for this? So it was the same old argument.
Actually, I think it's worse. I think it's some proto-Alex Jones bullshit. What you have is somebody who, he consulted with Jack Chick on creating the anti-Dungeons & Dragons Chick tracks.
Right. I wanted to mention that because I got kicked out of church when I was a kid for playing Magic the Gathering because the pastor was reading those fucking Chick tracks. He was convinced that I was owned by Satan.
You can thank Bill for a big piece of that.
The one believable thing he says in the whole argument was that. But I want to know a lot more about vampires. Like, how do you convince 5 women to give you their blood for a year? Like, tell me the secret.
How do you survive on blessed hosts, blessed holy crackers and blood for a year and just, be totes good? How, I didn't even mention the fact that the lady who was interviewing him in that 8-part series apparently had said somewhere else that her baby was teleported out of her womb while she was pregnant by lizard people.
That's amazing. If that had been me, I'd be like, here's the photos, here's the biography, here's the police report. Show me something.
Right.
Surely with all these thousands of revelations you had with these people, and I love it how he fell into, well, I'm not saying it, they're saying it. Well, if somebody came to me and said someone cannibalized their son and raped her, there would be a fucking police report, at least, that I could show something.
And if I didn't have that, I wouldn't spend the next 30 years saying that.
Exactly.
But the thing is, these mass panics that happen, that's what happened. We as a society do that, and when it comes to fear of the unknown, that is a perfect example of the fact that is how irrational people behave.
Right.
And if we don't call it out for what it is, we're giving them safe haven to continue to spread incredibly xenophobic, vile, damaging accusations that can be used to justify violence in the future.
Right, and I got to compliment you on the way you handled it, because I think you said recently on your Facebook page that you were a bit self-conscious of your voice. And first of all, personally, I love your voice, but I more importantly think your manner is really good here, because you were very calm and collected, and you just kept letting him talk. And finally, when you said, "I don't believe you," like that hit me like a truck. I was like, "Oh shit!"
Well, it's funny, when you realize and you point out that the emperor is not wearing clothes, how many people were willing to go along with it up until that point.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You had somebody who just leaned on their theological, I have a theological education, I have a degree in theology.
Right.
And then going, don't you accuse Catholics of being Satanist, pedophiles? Oh yeah, well, the pedophiles,
right.
but not all of them, him all of the stuff about that, and then saying, I got a degree in theology from this Catholic seminary. All I had to do was ask him, do you think that degree was good? And him going, no. Okay, so you discredited your own degree. Cool. What about what about everything else? And you just go down the line. And if anything, I have to applaud his honesty in just how ill-prepared, ill-represented, and it just... it was nuts.
But that's where the cracks started to show, is when you were like, okay, so what degree exactly? And then he said Liberty University. I'm like, oh, here we go.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So the cracks started showing.
Yeah, I went to Upstairs University, man.
See, but the difference, like, if it was me, I would have went all in on vampire. Like, okay, how long were your fangs? Did they fall out? Did you take pictures of yourself? Did you show up in mirrors? If
I
not,
know.
how did you not prove to everybody they're fucking vampires?
So the thing is, I have an idea of where that would have gone. If you give somebody the opportunity, they're just going to keep going on. Oh, well, they grew.
Right.
What if you said, they grew, a quarter of an inch long? Also, this is where I stayed, and of course, I didn't want to prove it to people because I was part of the greater conspiracy that I'm trying to assert is going on. I was part of the evil things that I'm trying to espouse now.
Right. So I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you, but I can't show you, but I could. And I'm trying to tell you, but they're out there. Like, it's just
exactly. Tom, you hit the nail on the head. Yep.
And another overlooked point, when you finally nailed him down on the numbers.
And this is the last one, unfortunately. Go ahead.
This is it. Yeah, real quick. When you nailed him down on the numbers, he's like, well, it's everywhere. Well, there's thousands of people. All right, even if it's 10,000 people, that's less than 1% of the population, jackass.
Well, yeah, and the fact that when I said, dude, you accused, you said that these evil groups are everywhere. You said, I didn't say everywhere. I said, I've seen your video, Bill. You said everywhere. And he goes, oh, well, when I say everywhere, what I mean is, it's like, dude, you... But anyway,
it's
Tom,
all bullshit, but I thank you for that interview.
I appreciate it. I hope people get to watch it because that was a lot of fun.
It was amazing. Well done. Love you guys. Take care.
Take care,
Thanks,
Thank
Tom.
you.
Living your glory days.
You know what? I feel like I got a big head over it, but God, that felt good to squish that kind of bullshit.
All
Let's
right.
talk to Scott in South Carolina.
This is our last call. Scott is a theist. He has called in before and is calling back.
Yeah.
Scott,
Oh, I think
Whoops.
we still need to.
We do need to open you up and actually get you on.
Yeah,
Scott, welcome.
In South Carolina. Hey.
Yeah. Hey, I didn't hear the beep. What's going on?
I don't know, man.
No, that's fine. V and Eric, how are you?
Doing well. You wanted to continue our conversation about evil.
I do. I absolutely do. And let me add my thanks for the overtime for us. So last week, if you recall, V, especially you defined evil for me, and I understand that you admitted it was a less than perfect definition and that you're still working through it. I get that. But you defined it as intentional harm. And your examples were, say, genocides. I think we could add to it, like a mass murder or serial killers or, those kinds of things. I thought about that this week, and I thought about our conversation this week, and I actually rewatched it a couple times to see where I absolutely flubbed, my discussion, which were in numerous places.
Oh man! Well, everybody else, take a note out of Scott's book here, because that's exactly what you want to do before you call back in. Rewatch, do some thinking, and I'm super excited about continuing now. So yeah.
Well,
what have you got this week?
I have no illusion about not flubbing this one. It would just be in different areas. So,
that's okay. That's how we get better.
Oh yeah.
So what's up?
Well, no, my response. And I noticed in last week's that I actually didn't give you my definition of evil as we got to talking and moving into other areas. But my response question to your definition, V, is it the harm? In your definition, it was intentional harm. So is it the harm itself or the intention that are evil?
Interesting question. I think in the same way that you would say, is a peanut butter and jelly sandwich made up by the peanut butter or the jelly? I would say that based on this definition, evil would be the fact that both are present. I think that you can have harm without evil, and I think that you can have intent to harm without it being evil, if it doesn't come to anything. But I think if I am going all in on this definition, and for right now, I'll fine doing that, I would say that both are necessary in order for me to call it evil or understand it as evil.
Okay. So you can have an evil intention, an intent to do evil. And I think there's a distinction there.
Yes, I do want to clarify though that I don't necessarily find it valuable to describe very many things as evil, like an evil intention. You can have a harmful intention. I don't know. There's something. I understand colloquially what that means, and I am happy to have that conversation. But I would be hesitant to call thoughts evil, just because that gets into thought crime and all weird kinds of stuff. So you can have an intent to do harm, and if you intentionally do a great amount of harm, like commit a genocide, then that is an evil thing, I guess.
I guess my problem with, I'm sorry, Eric.
No, it's okay. I was going to take things in a different direction. I want you to get the chance to engage with V first.
Yeah. We can always have another conversation about what evil actually is, because I'm actually not tied to this at all.
I was going to go, Scott.
Okay.
This is a really, because I think this is maybe the most important, the most critical topic within the Bible.
Really?
Without the idea of evil, there would be no Bible. Where there'd be no need for a Bible, there'd be no need for Jesus. Sure. It's addressed cover to cover. It's the whole topic.
Sin and salvation from sin. Okay.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, so proving evil will do what for you?
I don't think I need to prove it. I don't think anybody would deny that evil exists in the world. You don't have to look very far to see that. So my question is, what's the nature of evil? Where does it come from? How does it originate?
Now that
my definition before.
Go ahead.
Go for
Let
it.
me just give you my definition before I forget again.
Sure.
Is a very simple one, and that is, and this is my understanding theologically of the biblical definition, is that evil is not an entity in itself, but it is the absence of good. Very simply, the absence of good, much like darkness is the absence of light. And And that, of course, opens up a whole other world of questions as to what do we mean by good.
Well, yeah, because
And,
most things are not objectively good. Like the camera that I'm looking into as a camera, like there's nothing particularly good about it apart from the fact that I guess it works.
But that doesn't make it evil.
Right. So I feel like in order to...
No.
Yeah, like in order to, and I've heard your
not-
definition before, Scott. It's actually one that I clung to a lot in my last days as a Christian. And the problem that I see with it now on the other side, and then we can get into it more, is the assumption that good is the default and somehow also like that there are only those two options, right? So it's assuming that only good and evil exist and that good is the default. So it kind of has a couple of assumptions baked in there that I would want answered before accepting that definition.
Well, that leads, I guess, to that. I agree. I absolutely agree, because one of my follow-up questions to that is, where do you draw the line between good and evil? I mean, we can look at extremes, which we tend to do in these kinds of discussions. You know, there's always the default go to the Holocaust and Nazi Germany and Mein Kampf, and you know, no one in their right mind, I don't think, would deny that there's a lot of evil going on there. Or we can go to the ultimate good. I don't know, what's the default?
There is no
the ultimate
default.
good. Yeah. Well, there's a Mother Teresa who absolutely gives her whole life. Some people would argue with that.
Yeah, we would.
Yeah,
well,
which I hear you doing.
No, I get
But
the.
those are I'm not saying I
Yeah.
would say that. I'm just saying
Yeah.
those are default extremes that we go to. But my problem is, when you get closer to the middle, where is that line drawn?
There is no
And
line.
I'm not sure. So you go from black to gray to a very large gray into white, or is there no white and no black?
Well, I think it's an interesting experiment to frame it in terms of a spectrum, and anybody who knows me knows I love spectrums. But I think the thing here is that, I guess for me, I would define evil right now in this iteration as intentionally caused harm in certain circumstances. And I would define something that is good as something that, you know, I don't know if I'm maybe I'm just confused. Are you saying that there is nothing other than good and evil, and it's just degrees of those two things? Because I exist mostly in like kind of an amoral space where most things just kind of are. And things that are exceptionally awesome are good things, and things that are exceptionally bad are maybe evil or harmful things. But, like, I think those are just descriptors for things that we personally find really good or really not good. And everything else just kind of is.
Well, I mentioned briefly last week that I reject the Christian, and I put air quotes around Christian theology of prosperity theology, that God causes the pleasant things in our lives and Satan brings the difficult things or the not harmful, the unpleasant things in our lives. And it's a simplistic, it's barely a theology at all. It's just a simplistic way of seeing things. But what I hear you saying is, then please tell me if I'm wrong, if I'm mishearing you.
Yeah.
Is that good falls into what I consider to be pleasant, and bad or evil falls into what I consider harmful or difficult, and then we can move into the painful. Is evil pain? And
well,
and I think if that's the case, then that's. I think that's a simplistic way of seeing both good and bad, because
absolutely, and that's certainly not the extent of it. I think colloquially, when you say this is good soup, then what you're saying is this soup is pleasant to me, or maybe it's nourishing me and it's making me feel better, and so you use the word good. And if you see something that really strikes a chord in you that feels like someone intentionally tried to hurt you or someone else, evil might be a word that you use there. But if we're going into like deep into like moral philosophy, then oh boy, we need to buckle in, because that's a whole thing.
I think it's pretty cut and dry, actually.
What is your definition of good and evil, Eric? Because you've been kind of squirming this whole time.
I have been squirming this whole time, Scott. You're
I love to
anthropomorphizing.
make Eric.
You'd love to make me squirm.
That's
Well,
one of my goals in life.
So here's why it's frustrating, Scott. What is tastiness?
That's subjective, of course.
Oh, no. Hold on. Are you saying tastiness doesn't exist?
No.
Because I'm pretty sure I
I'm
can
saying
taste
that
things.
I'm saying what's tasty to you is not perhaps tasty to me.
Ah, got it. Okay. So do you think people can define what they call good or evil a little bit differently depending on their view of the world?
No doubt.
Okay.
Undoubtedly.
Or maybe smelliness? Or how about if I just anthropomorphize the sea and say that the sea was angry, during the storm? And then I ask you, Scott, what is the nature of the sea when we see that it was angry during the storm? Does that make any sense to you?
It makes some sense, but what I think your underlying point is that the idea of good and evil are subjective and in the eye of the beholder.
And they're also based in being treated as not that. They're based in this assertion that evil, right, and sin in particular, because we brought up sin in parallel with this, is
Right.
It is a blood curse. It is something that in the Old
I
Testament,
knew you were going to go there.
it's a blood
Yeah.
curse. And
relax.
yeah, I mean it is. And so the idea that we can describe things that the way you and V were doing, it's fantastic. That's how language happens, is we come to agreements on what those things mean. But when you look at that and say we came to agreement on this thing, therefore blood curse, no. I don't believe in sin because I don't believe that there is a giant ledger with a very, very, a meticulous deity sitting there counting all the times you touched your willy. It just doesn't work out. It doesn't make sense, and it is not helpful. And so when we talk about the nature of good and evil, we're implying a lot that I think Christians can walk away with one view of and atheists can walk away with another view of. And I want to make sure that I'm very clear and to the point when I say this, that if we're trying to find descriptors of things the way you and V were, fantastic. But if anybody thinks that we're okay with the implication that this blood curse, that there is a tally and that there is some supernatural force that is causing this. I mean, it gets down to this idea of fundamental brokenness. If you're talking about evil, if you're talking about sin, then how can you not be implying this idea that God made everyone broken? Or that we brought it upon ourselves that we're broken and it's our brokenness that infects the world? That is what the religious view brings to it. And I cannot be okay with talking about this without very, very explicitly pointing out, no. And if any of that stuff is implied, then I don't think it exists.
Okay.
Okay, so...
You've been very clear. You've been
okay.
very clear. No,
I want to be super
I
clear. Yeah, because...
No, I appreciate the view, and I think it's a legitimate view. I really do. I don't want to dismiss it out of hand at all. Because
okay, good.
It's legitimate. In my thinking, I'm not saying it's legitimate. In my thinking, absolutely legitimate. I think that what gets lost in the conversation, as far as the biblical narrative regarding God's sovereignty, also the existence of evil, his absolute good. I mean, obviously, I have to reject the idea that God is evil and that's why evil exists. That doesn't make sense.
No, not if we're using evil as a descriptor. If you're using it as a...
Well, the best metaphor for this, I think, was given to us by Jesus himself in the book of Luke with a story everybody knows, which is the prodigal son story. Here you have a father in the story who is sovereign over his land, over his absolute, I don't know if he has a ranch, a farm. He's very wealthy. He has two sons. One son comes to him. I know you know the story, but I'll rehearse it anyway.
Well, we are running over time, so we do want to make sure that we're moving forward.
I'm not going to preach a sermon, but you know the story.
Yeah.
The son wants to leave, wants to take his inheritance with him. The father, against his own better judgment, gives him, knowing the son is going to go anyway, he equips him to go. The son goes and squanders, and in Jesus' words, he comes to himself and comes back to the father. And I don't know a better explanation for the sovereignty of God and and the relationship. And I think what gets lost in this discussion is that God created us for relationship, and as such, He gave us free will. There is no relationship without a free will to either engage or not engage.
Scott, I agree that free like relationships in the way that you are defining them would require some form of will that was not just programmed in. That said, I don't think that we're getting to this place in talking about the Bible where I understand that this is the common interpretation among Western Christians of the 21st century, that this is what that story was about, or that it had anything to do with us at all, and I actually very much doubt that. But the problem that I have with this is if the father of that ranch was truly sovereign, couldn't he have, in some way, shape, or form, could things have gone any other way? Like, you're talking about this human who's doing a nice thing for his son and saying that somehow equates to God not being able to stop us from hurting ourselves or allowing us to hurt ourselves and giving us the option in the first place?
I wouldn't frame it that way at all. I would frame it as God being wanting genuine relationship with his children that he created and giving them the freedom to walk away if that's what they chose.
So here's the thing. If your dad goes out for a pack of cigarettes and never comes home, and then you start saying that your dad really wants a relationship with your siblings, I think you took a step too far, Scott.
I think
because you're inferring a relationship that doesn't exist.
Between the dad with the cigarettes or between God and man?
Both.
I don't get the God with cigarettes analogy.
Sure. Have you heard that whole, dad went out for a pack of cigarettes when I was 3 and never came back home?
Of course, yes. Okay,
so now let's look at God. How many times have you met God in person? Have you talked to him on the phone? Has he sent you a letter, maybe a Christmas present? I'm pretty sure that my a grandma who really is ambivalent about me entirely, at least sends me a Christmas card, is a whole lot better and has a whole lot more care about me than the non-existent person who never sent me one, right? Like, you assert that God created us. No, that is not a thing. If you want to say that's the thing, cool, whatever you want to tell yourself. But if you're going to say it to us, back it up. Like,
there's a couple things you said there.
Yeah.
I think the main thing is a struggle within the Christian community, and that is, how do you have a relationship with a God you can't sense, that you can't see, touch, smell, feel? And that's a fair question, and I mean, we could go off on that because I've studied that for decades, that concept, and there are answers to it.
Scott,
which I don't have time to.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
Scott, the concern that I've got more than
that seemed a little dismissive. I'm sorry.
What did?
Yeah.
Well, I just thought, Eric, your response to that was a little dismissive without even hearing the argument.
Here's where I'm coming from, and I think we're all just kind of like very engaged in this topic, and we're entering it from different points, all three of us. I think the thing that I'm most concerned about, just overall, because we've touched on evil and that good evil dichotomy. We've talked about free will versus someone being sovereign and actually in control of things. We've talked about pain and whether or not that is inherently evil. There are a bunch of different conversations we're having here, and I think that's probably contributing to some of the confusion. But I think the biggest issue that I have, Scott, is I've heard you say a couple of times, not just in this call, but in other calls that you've had with us, that you have to believe a thing because otherwise it conflicts with something and doesn't make sense. And to me, that phrasing is very concerning because you don't have to believe that. If you are finding a contradiction somewhere or something that doesn't seem to, both cannot be true, I would trust that a lot more than I think you're allowing yourself to, because I don't have to think anything, right? There is nothing in this world that I have to believe in order to live my life. And if I find something that I have to force myself to accept, that's a really good indicator for me that maybe that thing is not jiving with the rest of my worldview, or maybe the rest of my worldview has to shift. So as we talk about these things, and I do want you to call back, and I would love to narrow this down into one of these several topics, because I think any one of them would be really interesting to dive into more. I would encourage you to think about how you're phrasing things if I'm misunderstanding. Or if you do feel like you are having to force yourself to believe things in order to preserve your worldview, why that is, and why a God who wants you to know him and wants you to understand him is making it so difficult to hold these concepts in tension with each other. So just a couple things to leave you with today, but any last thoughts for us?
Sure. No, I appreciate that, and I actually agree with you. I've spent the majority of my Christian life, again, a few decades now, as one of the more skeptical Christians that I've ever met. I think Christianity in general in our churches needs a much bigger dose of skepticism. On my blog, as small as it is, one of the topics I'm going to write about is, the title of it is "Take a Cynic to Lunch," because cynicism is undervalued within the church. Holding up things we believe as absolutely true with very little evidence. Now, when it comes to sovereignty versus free will, I don't. If I said I have to believe them, it's because I've explored both of them and find them equally true within the scriptures. Yeah. So I can't dismiss one over the other because they're both dynamically true within the scriptures.
I think that's where we start to bump against is we're not using religious, Christian scripture to be the baseline of how we're going to view the world. We're just going to view the world.
I understand that. And
so
I really get that.
And
but
Scott,
it's the only base of understanding that I have.
You have more, but we can go into it. Scott, I snapped at you partially because V's absolutely right. We started going into a whole bunch of different directions and being proselytized to when we're having a conversation, and moving to, well, God created you and wants to have a relationship with you, just hit me as incredibly condescending as well. And even though you probably didn't intend it that way, I shot condescension back at you. I can do better than that.
I'm so sorry.
That's
was
okay.
Not my intention.
But I want to be aware that's what happened, at least from where I'm at. I apologize.
No,
but Scott,
my goal. Oh no, I appreciate that. My goal was simply to relate the biblical narrative. That's all.
I'm
not trying to proselytize. I'm not trying to evangelize.
I want to know what you think. We want to know what you think and why, and we want you to call back. Call back sooner because we are so far past time and we have so much that we can go through in so many different directions. I know. And we want it. I did.
I'm sorry when you
and then we're gonna wrap up.
I got here as quick as I could after church got up. So you sort of
See, we
got to start later.
We need to start later.
Okay, Scott.
No, don't do it on my account.
No, not just you, but we got.
We want the people who are in the churches to call us.
Yeah.
So after church would be a good idea. Thank you so much for calling in, though, Scott. Please do call back, and we can tackle one of these issues that I think is going to be really interesting.
Well, there's this and a host of others.
But we got it. But we. Scott, we got to go, man.
Okay, I know we're late. Okay, talk to you guys later.
Take care, buddy. Ooh, I got fired up.
Yeah.
I'll work on that.
Hey, maybe afternoon Eric is the Eric that's going to get fired up. Maybe we do need to move to noon.
Maybe. I don't know. But we've got some super chats that we want to go through.
Yep.
Let's start with Ricky from Planet K. Yo, you guys are dope AF. Love what you're doing. Y'all help me get past my JW upbringing.
Awesome.
Ricky, thank you.
Janet Moorcraft, $19.99. Thank you, Janet. Love you both. Be happy.
Yay. Flaming Skeptic said, interesting Mormon history. Apparently one of my direct ancestors hired Joseph Smith's bodyguard to kill one of his wives.
Oh my
Holy
goodness.
Crap. Flaming Skeptic, thank you for the $5.
Asexual Atheist, $4.99. Thank you so much. Happy Nun Day. Well, there is a sun, technically. Dante
Verona shot us $20 and says, here's a short list of words I almost always only find in skeptic circles interlocutor, syllogism, fallacy, unfalsifiable, epistemology. Skeptic generation, perhaps not surprisingly, also improves the quality of language. I love that.
I hope we do. Like that would be very great. But only use those words if you know what they mean.
Yes,
please.
and if you don't understand what dishonest means, get rid of it. You are not helping anyone. Thank you for the $20, Dante.
Sarah Dye, $10. Thank you, Sarah. I love you guys. Thank you for a great show. You two are super helpful and wonderful to listen to. And Eric, thank you for signing my book.
Yay! Oh, it was an absolute pleasure, and you were just wonderful to talk to. So glad that we got to meet you. Amit Matthew shot us $10 and says, I'm wearing my Atheist Inner Circle shirt at the gym today. Nobody has asked me who Becky is yet.
Nice. Oh my gosh,
you know
Sarah was wearing the same sweatshirt at Faithless Forum, which was fun. Nathan Schultz, $10. Call back to the previous call from me. Why isn't Picard your captain, Eric?
Because Picard, very specifically, Picard is more of an idea than a character. Picard is the incarnation, the physical incarnation of the Federation, and what the Federation's goals are. And so he's going to view everything through that lens. I'd much rather have someone like Janeway who's willing to tear apart time and space to save me, because I think you can make a case that if, something happened and a local tribe on a planet was going to, kill you for breaking their laws, I think Picard would be like, oh, wow, that's a real bummer, but according to our laws, we have to respect theirs. Screw that. Give me Janeway.
I have a slightly different viewpoint, but I also think that Janeway is objectively the best captain. John Klein also sent us $5. Thank you, John. And I'll read out Sarah's as well. Sarah Dye also gave us $5 more. Thank you, Sarah. Eric, when is your debate with Dean?
So apparently at the university, the group that was sponsoring the debate brought in some new people who decided that they were going to go back over things and cut things out of their budget, and they decided to cut the debate. So Dean and I are currently looking for where and how to have that debate still. It's just not going to be at the time that we had said, and stay tuned. Yeah. Oh, student Dr. Ben shot us $5. Says, it was awesome to meet both of you at Faithless Forum. When I first saw Eric, he literally picked me up off the ground, and I will never forget that. Aww. I'm glad that you were okay with that. I'm so sorry. I was just so excited to see Ben that I just hugged him, and apparently we had liftoff. It was wonderful meeting you. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And Zach B gave us $10. Thank you, Zach. Thank you for another fantastic week. As an atheist, homeschooled, evangelical pastor's kid, your show has been great to give me perspective and be more caring to those in my life that are still religious.
Do better than I did with that last caller.
Thank you, Zach. As an atheist, homeschooled, evangelical pastor's kid, I see you.
V, we have run long. This is going to be wild to clip, but thank you so much. So we're not going to be seeing V next week, so wish me luck, you guys. V, I love you. And for everybody,
you too.
Until next time.
Until next time, I'm out, so be nice to Eric while I'm gone.